And we are back here from City National Arena, our training camp bulletin presented by Station Casinos as the Vegas Golden Knights continue along with Phase 3 of the NHL's Return to Play program. And great to have you with us here from Summerlin Hospital Rink at City National Arena. The Golden Knights, some of them have started to kind of filter out onto the ice a little bit. I'll tell you, I don't know if there's enough oxygen in this studio with two play-by-play guys. But Dave Gosher, Dan Duba, great to have you with us here on this Thursday morning. And the Golden Knights continuing to move along here. And it's hard to believe, Dan, we're only a couple of days away this Sunday, right, where they'll be headed to Edmonton, and into the bubble they go to get going on the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs.
It's a week until the first Golden Knights exhibition contest, their only exhibition contest. And how might we celebrate? With Dave Gosher's birthday.
Oh, that's right.
Happy
thank
birthday,
you very
Dave.
Much. Hi, thank you.
There you go.
You don't turn 41 every day, so this is great.
It's amazing. I started making a list of all the players and staff who've celebrated birthdays since there was a Golden Knights game, and you're added to the list now. And
That's
there's a couple more coming in the next week or two.
Oh, that's so you've got a whole list there. Those are copious.
I've got lots of lists. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I've
know.
be doing during the pause, is making lists.
That's fantastic. Great to see the Golden Knights back out there again today. You're taking a peek at Mark Stone. It was interesting to hear Pete DeBoer, and he's talked about this pretty regularly, Dan, throughout Phase 3, just the commitment of the players, and it started with the leadership group. And Mark Stone, you'd think, would be really high on that list in terms of how they treated the pause. It wasn't just going to be idle, wasted time. They made a commitment to keep themselves in shape. And then, this is what now, probably 6 weeks now they've been skating when you think about phases 1 and 2, so that they really could hit the ice in full flight when Phase 3 came around.
And when you hear the veterans talk about the preparation for this point in time, it's not just Phase 3, it's not just Phase 2 or Phase 1. We're talking way back in March when there was so much more uncertainty. Would it be a couple of weeks, a couple of months? Turns out, it's going to be much more than that between games. But there was a premium on preparation even back then. And there also seems to be, if you read between the lines, the sense that they don't feel that all the other teams were doing the same thing. They've got an edge because of how much preparation they've put in from the start. And I couldn't help but think of an old quote. It's from an Alexander Pope play. And George Washington used the line talking to the troops. Ready for this, Dave? I know you're a revolutionary.
Yes, I am. Right? I love history. Go ahead.
And the line is, you can't guarantee success, but you could do something better. You can deserve it.
Oh, I like that. You can deserve it, That was Alex Pope?
Alex Pope. Yeah,
or Alexander Pope?
Yep, and that's a line that's been used. I think Churchill used it. It's often been repeated by leaders throughout the last several hundred years, but I've thought of that often. We can't predict the future, as we have been reminded repeatedly over the last few months. But if you can't guarantee what's going to happen for you, you can do everything to control your destiny. You can deserve success even if you can't guarantee it. And it seems to me that the Golden Knights have done everything to deserve that success even if they can't guarantee it.
Yeah, they've done a terrific job, Dan. Great point, and a great quote from Alexander Pope as well. We invite you to send us in your questions. Glad you're joining us on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook as the Golden Knights continue along with their Phase 3 of this, what will eventually be the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Of course, great to have you with us here from City National Arena. We have some props here today. This is a great look. The VGK branded Cup Series now available at all Terrible locations. All the Terribles in Nevada and in Utah. So visit now. You can get these four. Get them while you can. But you've got all four here. So you've got Alex Tuch, Mark Stone, Ryan Reeves, Shea Theodore over there.
Yeah.
So be sure to go to Terribles. Fire these up for yourselves. Dan and I are going to split 2 and 2 here. We're going to take these before we leave today, but you can get your own.
That's right. Well, Dave's got to celebrate with something, and I wonder what will be in the cups later this afternoon.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They're sharp, great design.
Yeah, those are
too.
fantastic.
Yeah,
those are fantastic.
Add them to the collection.
Yep.
Got bobbleheads and cups. And what's next?
Yeah. There's not much I don't have here. Trying to find something on the interwebs here, and I don't have the link you said you sent me.
Oh, no.
How's that for live streaming?
Well, to fill time, Dave, how about perhaps the biggest topic in the National Hockey League today?
Yep.
The new division rival for the Golden Knights, the Seattle NHL franchise, now has a name and a logo and a word mark and everything else. It's the Seattle Kraken.
Which is awesome.
I love it.
It's
Kraken.
awesome.
Kraken. Kraken.
Yeah.
And I love they've got the Space Needle in the one of the logos. They've got in the kind of the logo that kind of they've got what's the thing? A tentacle of the squid, the tentacle of the Kraken, that kind of snakes into the S. Very cool. And you might not know what is a Kraken. And I guess I should pull up the textbook definition. But Kraken is a mythical figure. It's a giant squid. And it was one of the more popular, but maybe, I think probably there were some folks who were dead set against the Kraken. I thought it was great. I was exchanging text messages with a friend of mine yesterday, Dave, and he was asking if I had any inside information working in the National Hockey League, because he was trying to get a little wager with his friend who was hoping for the inside scoop. He thought it would be Kraken. I said, I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm hoping for Kraken. And it is. Kraken, again, according to the internet, is a legendary cephalopod-like sea monster of gigantic size in Scandinavian folklore. Okay. And according to the Norse sagas, they dwell off the coast of Norway and Greenland, a long way from the Pacific Northwest.
Giant squid.
Giant squid, yes. Mythical giant squid.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like Golden Knight a little bit more.
Yeah,
Golden Knights, but
I would
I
agree.
can live with the Kraken. Hey, so we invite you to send in your comments, questions, whatever floats your boat. John Holden, father of Nick, says, Dave, happy 50th birthday. I wish he was right. He's close.
Close.
He's close. I'm not going to say which direction he's close, but he's pretty close anyway. But oh, that's great. Yeah. So that the Seattle franchise. So they're coming in, not this year, but the year 2022. Is that what it's going to be?
They are not playing in 2021. They'll start in 21, 22.
Yeah.
The centuries, the years, and the pandemic make this all quite confusing.
Yeah,
But they won't be playing anytime soon.
No, they have a name now, which
They've got a
is great. And I was thinking back when I saw that this morning, Dan, about the Kraken, that the Golden Knights, and there was so much curiosity. Was that 3 years ago now? 3 plus, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's more than that. It's more like 4 years.
4 years ago, 2016.
2016.
Yeah. They had the huge event outside T-Mobile Arena, and there you had they had all the gear printed up. And now when you think about it now, you can't go 5 minutes in your day's travels around here without seeing golf shirt, hats, bumpers, stickers, license plates, whatever it might be.
It's fantastic, and it seems to have grown. And I thought, run to the Stanley Cup final in the first year, that might be the climax. Could they continue that buzz? And it seems to me that it has grown even more. There's more Golden Knights stuff exponentially now than there was even in the spring of 2018. And I often go back to what Max Pacioretty said back in his inaugural press conference with the Golden Knights just prior to season 2, having observed the Golden Knights' inaugural season from afar. And his observation was people in Las Vegas fell in love with the Golden Knights first, then they fell in love with hockey. Yeah. And I think that has continued to percolate. And I love just whether it's getting on an elevator, in line at the grocery store, somebody wants to talk about the Golden Knights, especially in the last say week or two, and you can feel it's getting closer.
Yeah.
There's actual hockey happening here in Las Vegas with these practices during Phase 3. Sports in general, having watched some Major League Baseball, some NBA basketball, and Major League Baseball is playing games for real today. And the Golden Knights are going to play an exhibition game in 1 week.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it, just the passion that people have for this team on a daily basis. Of course, that's our next-gen cam here at Summerlin Hospital Rink as you take a peek. There's Alex Tuch coming back here, of course, from what's been, I'm sure, a frustrating season for him, Dan. And, Pete DeBoer, in his Zoom call with the media yesterday, was talking about Alex Tuch. And I think the question was, what's been your message to him? And he said, look, if you have a great playoff, no one's going to remember the regular season. And you think about, especially going back to 2018, as you mentioned, and how often he was a difference maker in that run to the Stanley Cup final.
The other thing Alex Tuch said yesterday was that he's lost 10 pounds during the break. And when we talked earlier about the commitment, that preparation, you don't drop 10 pounds. When you're an NHL player and you're in such tremendous shape, it's not like you go on a fat diet for a week and you drop 10 pounds. These guys are trying to add muscle, and at the same time as you're adding muscle, you're stripping away the excess body weight. So I'd be curious to know not only what his weight might be, but the body mass index on how much of his weight is fat, how much is muscle, right? You get pretty advanced in this stuff. But that's pretty interesting stuff from Alex Tuch, and it just goes to show where you can draw motivation. If you haven't had a great season, if you've been injured, to be out there and to be in the kind of shape and try to finish this season in a better way than he started.
I don't know many people that lost weight during the pandemic.
No, he did not have my diet during the pandemic. I was too busy baking chocolate chip banana bread.
Yeah, but good on him, and obviously his commitment to getting himself. He says yesterday was the best he's felt. Let's listen in a little bit here as that is the one and only Ryan Craig at the whiteboard as the Golden Knights get it going here as our training camp bulletin presented by Station Casinos continues. courtesy of the Next Gen Cam here at City National Arena, Summerlin Hospital Rink, and the Golden Knights continuing to go through their training camp sessions. Of course, as we said, Sunday they will head to the Bubble in Edmonton and get going. Of course, first a preseason game against Arizona, the 3 round robin games, and then they're on to the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs after that. Some comments, Dan. First off, Kim says, this is a great point. She goes, I love that this is something I could share from California with my 70-plus-year-old aunt who lives in Henderson. So that's great. Here on the stream. Leslie in Pensacola checking in. Michael in Gothenburg, Sweden. Robin Leonard's hometown.
Sweden, wow.
I've been there. Why, you say? Why else would you go but to see Bruce Springsteen?
Didn't he break the stadium there?
He did break the stadium.
Right? They literally had to condemn the stadium
Yes.
after a Bruce Springsteen concert years ago in Gothenburg.
Back in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And then they I guess they reinforced it because when I was there 4 years ago, it was the same place.
They had to rebuild.
Yeah,
And if you build it for
fantastic.
Bruce Springsteen, they will come.
Yep. And Greg in Vancouver watching on YouTube. Greg, thanks for checking in. Of course, our training camp bulletins, of course, are brought to you by our friends at Station Casinos, our presenting sponsor. People have been curious, I would think, Dan. So Max Pacioretty, right, was not out there yesterday. Was not out there in the previous session. No Max Pacioretty as well yet today either.
And we heard from Pete DeBoer saying that it was not COVID-related. And then the follow-up comments yesterday seemed to indicate that before the team does head to the Bubble that Max could be on the ice again. But, again, who knows? Take it a day at a time. As of today, he's not on the ice. So in his spot, Nick Cousins, along with Will Carlson and Mark Stone. Nick Cousins had been on what we would call the fourth line with Will Carrier and Ryan Reeves. So Tomas Nosek gets the bump up, but you see the continuation of the other lines, Marcia, Stastny, and Smith, Stevenson, Waugh, and Tuch as the others. So there are discussions, I'm sure, that if Pacioretty couldn't go, does Cousins plop into that spot? Do you just bump him up from the fourth line? Or perhaps do you go in another direction and move somebody from the second line up to the first line? Or do you kind of leave that spot open so if Max comes back, you don't want to disrupt the other lines? Interesting strategy, and I wonder how much of that is based on the expectation of what kind of timetable that we're looking at for Pacioretty's return.
Pete DeBoer did say yesterday, too, though, Dan, he thought that we would see Pacioretty on the ice again before they go to Edmonton on Sunday. So that was a good cautionary note from him.
Which is probably why you've got Cousins in that spot. In a normal circumstance, Nick Cousins, I don't think, would be on the first line with Carlson and Stone. If it were, again, I might be reading into this too much, but my thought process is if you expected Pacioretty to be out for an extended period of time, it'd be more likely to bump somebody else into that spot who would be a more prototypical first-line player. With no disrespect to Nick Cousins, I think there are guys ahead of him in that pecking order.
When they put Nick Waugh in Mark Stone's spot, you remember when Stone was injured, he missed the final 6 games before the pause. Nick Waugh jumped up there, did great things, and he's been discussed quite a bit during this training camp, and rightly so. And Pete DeBoer was asked yesterday about Nick. He's been asked about him on many different occasions, and he said we felt that we needed that third line to be a scoring threat. It had kind of been really a bit of a black hole for a good portion of the season for the Golden Knights. And, he said when at least in Pete DeBoer's time with the team from mid-January on forward, he kind of felt wherever they put Nick in the lineup, whatever they asked him to do, good things happened. And he said that's the quickest and easiest way for you to earn the trust of your coaching staff. And there's a look at Nick Waugh, who they felt was a top 9 forward, and now he's certainly getting a chance, knock on any wood you can find, health, for everyone permitted, that he'll get a chance to play in that top 9 with what could be a formidable line with Chandler Stevenson and Alex Tuch.
Consistency for that line. I think if there was a line that lacked consistency for the Golden Knights in the regular season, it was that third line. A bunch of clubs you might think the fourth line would be the revolving door. Not so much the case with the Golden Knights. But with Stevenson kind of going up and down, Tuch in and out of the lineup with injury, obviously Nick Waugh, who had shuttled between the American League and the National League umpteen times, there was almost no consistency with that third line, and that can't be the right plan for it. So we'll see if it works out here in the tournament. But the other thing is, Dave, as Alex Tuch, you see there telling us that he had lost 10 pounds during the pause. To me, it looks like Nick Waugh has gotten bigger. And I don't know about poundage, but he looks like he's less skinny than he was when we last saw him in game action.
That's a good way to put it.
Which, a player of that age, and he's just a little bit younger than Alex Tuch, you'd want to get some bulk from someone like Nick Waugh. It was last week he made a move from behind the net in an offensive zone situation, and he was trying to get to the net mouth, and he had this burst of speed, 2 long strides, and then used his size to get positioning. You know the player he beat to get to that spot in front? Will Carlson.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. You know, that takes certainly a physical talent, also some courage, maybe some confidence that hadn't been there. I wonder about for White Cloud, for Waugh, guys who are trying to find a place on this team. Now that it's been so long, I think there's got to be a certain sense of comfort. Yeah, I'm part of this team. And maybe even for Nick Cousins, who played only a handful of games. At least White Cloud was part of the organization for a year or so, you know, but he's coming up from the American League. You know, Nick Waugh is trying to make sure he's an NHL player after going back and forth between the majors and the minors. At least Nick Cousins is an established NHL player these days. So each guy's trying to find their own spot.
And I think there's probably always that threshold, too, for young players where, you know, you're on the bubble for a little bit, right? And, you know, Nick Waugh was a huge part of the Charlotte team that won the Calder Cup last year and then comes over in the Eric Holla trade. Zach Whitecloud signing as a college free agent, who really helped form a reliable third pair with the Golden Knights with Nick Holden, really in that stretch kind of right before the pause. And, you know, this was touched on, I think, yesterday or the day before by Pete DeBoer, was there's a point where you cross over that threshold and you feel like you belong or that you're on the team. Not that you get comfortable or complacent, but confidence to make plays, confidence to do what got you here to begin with. And you look at both Zach Whitecloud and Nick Waugh, and you can't help but think, you know, with each passing practice and when they get back into playing real games again, that confidence will just continue to grow for those 2 young guys.
Complacency is not a good thing.
Can't have it.
Because even if you're doing everything right, you see Nick Hague on the screen just a second ago, it seemed that his progression was on track. He more or less won that defenseman job. But 3 games into the Pete DeBoer era, he scores his first NHL goal and is rewarded with a trip down to the American League.
That's right.
Tomas Nosek, a guy who has been instrumental, a regular with the Golden Knights the last few years. You talked about winning a Calder Cup. He did that in 2017 in the Detroit organization. But if you look at the way that the 4 lines shook out to start this camp, Nosek was on the outside looking in, and he's been a bona fide NHL player since the Golden Knights began. He hasn't played in the American League since the Calder Cup playoffs of 2017. So, you know, there he is with Will Carrier and Ryan Reeves. And, Dave, I went through the lineups.
So was this all done yesterday, these detailed notes?
With some things.
In the Duva compound down on the strip?
That's right. We've got to do something to earn our keep. I wanted to know how often Pete DeBoer used the 4th line to start a game. So we're talking 22 games. The Knights were 15-5-2 in those 22. Well, have a guess, Dave. Out of those 22 games, how many times did the 4th line start?
My guess would be 16.
19.
19.
Not only that, it was the final 19 consecutive games. The first 3, we're talking in Ottawa, Montreal, and Boston, the 3 before the break, the first 3 games from Pete DeBoer, those were the only 3 games the 4th line did not start. You had the Pacioretty line twice, and then the Marchessault line. Remember, Will Carlson was not available, so it was Marchessault, Stevenson, and Smith. But after the All-Star break, after the 10-day bye week, every game was started by those 3 players. Well, that's not exactly right, because while Reeves did start on the 4th line all 19 of those games, Carrier was there for 18. Remember, he had the one game he played up on the third line.
Yeah.
Tomas Nosek for 16 out of those 19. In other words, there was a little bit of movement. You had to deal with some injuries, so Pete DeBoer had to move guys from the fourth line to the third line and so on. Here's the question, though, Dave. Ready? Can
There's
you
a lot
name?
of thinking required by me right now.
Well, this is fun because I've talked enough. I've got all my facts and figures here. Can you name the other players who appeared on the fourth line if Nosek wasn't there for 3, if Carrier wasn't there for 1? That's 4 games altogether, 4 times that a player appeared on the fourth line. Just during that stretch of 19 games, not the whole season, just in that stretch. We're talking since the bye week in Carolina on January 31st. Can you name the other players who would have appeared on the fourth line?
Nick Watt?
Nick Watt.
One of them?
And he accounts for 2.
Okay. But that's
Okay.
only one person.
That's one person.
3 other humans.
But 2 games, right?
Okay.
So you've got 2 other instances.
Chandler Stevenson play on that
No.
line? No. Nick Cousins?
Nick Cousins is
Okay,
1.
2 Nicks. I got 2 to go.
You got one left.
Only 1 to go.
One
This is
left.
great. Think here. Right shot, left shot. Oh. Patrick Brown.
Good guess.
What do you mean? That's
But no.
wrong? What do you mean it's wrong?
Gage Quinney.
Okay, you're right.
Gage Quinney. But Patrick Brown did get in there, and that was that stretch, you're talking about in Anaheim, although in that particular game it was the regular fourth line with Carrier, Nosek, and Reeves. But, you had Gage Quinney played against Florida on February 22nd with Carrier and Reeves. Now, here's the thing. Was he in that spot the whole game, or was he there
Right.
simply because it was his NHL debut? Right, you get into the nitty-gritty of it, but you go earlier on back in Nashville and in Carolina where Nick Watt was the fourth-line center. One of those games with Nosek and Reeves, another with Carrier and Reeves. You get the idea. Point is that Nosek, Carrier, and Reeves has been the heart of the fourth line this year. And, of course, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare had been the fourth-line center for the first couple of seasons of the Golden Knights. Nosek was on the wing. Reeves had come over late in year 1. Carrier had injuries. So it was those 4 guys. But this season, it has been pretty consistent in Carrier, Nosek, and Reeves with few aberrations. And Nosek getting so much more time at center, which is where he played in the minors. He had wingers Tyler Bertuzzi and Marty Firk when they won the Calder Cup. Bertuzzi was the MVP of the playoffs, but I thought Nosek could have been the MVP of those playoffs. So it's just so interesting that there's so much trust in that fourth line, and I think that when you put the Golden Knights up against other clubs, what other teams can match the Golden Knights' fourth line in terms of, the physicality? Nobody, that's a given, right? Carrier and Reeves in their physical play, but how much time they get on the ice, the trust that the team puts in them.
Someone else had guessed Keegan Kolesar, but that's not right. Dan did the research.
I wrote it all down. down. Now,
It's all there in black and white.
again, we're talking strictly about starting lineups. Who was on the ice when they dropped the puck, which is not to say that the lineup continued that way for an entire game, but you get the idea.
To your point, Dan, about the depth of the Golden Knights and their third and fourth lines, Pete DeBoer was asked about that a couple of days ago, and he said, he's been with 2 teams that have gone to the Stanley Cup final. Once with New Jersey against the LA Kings, and then, of course, San Jose taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. He said in both of those series, the depth of the Kings and the depth of the Penguins was the difference. That was the kind of the tipping point in those 2 teams winning the Stanley Cup. And, we saw that here, Dan, in 2018, right, with, the Washington Capitals. Their depth kind of wore on as the series wore on. We also saw it in Game 1 of that series. The damage the Golden Knights' fourth line did, right, with Tomas Nosek, a couple of goals, Ryan Reeves with a big goal. If you're going to get anywhere over the course of a long playoff run, you've got to get contributions from your bottom 6 forwards.
Yeah, imagine this, Dave. Think about the critical goals in the last 2 series for the Vegas Golden Knights. Ryan Reeves scores the Western Conference clincher, Devontae Smith-Pelly in the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, if anybody had picked those 2 players to score clinching goals, series clinching goals in the last 2 rounds for the Golden Knights, I would have been skeptical.
I've been trying to forget about the latter of the two.
Yeah, well, but it drives home the point. And don't forget, Braden McNabb in the first round against the Kings, too.
Yes,
You're
exactly.
talking critical goals against playoff teams that don't always come from your star players. They're going to be involved. They've got to be at their best, because if your top line is not at your best, the other team will take advantage for sure. But it often falls to some of those unsung players. And even Chandler Stevenson, he was involved in that play against the Capitals where Derek Englund was called for high sticking when, in fact, a Capitals player had high stick a teammate. Stevenson was involved in that on the Washington
It was a bunch
side.
of baloney. That's what that call was.
Yeah.
Now you'd have a chance, right, the way the rules are now, where they could take a peek at that. A couple of things, Dan, on the, we invite you to send in your comments, questions, general thoughts on life. Cindy on the Facebook. Happy birthday, Dave, from a fellow relocated Rhode Islander.
Oh, wow.
There you go, the Ocean State. What's not to love? Corey asked, do the Golden Knights get a Pacific Division Championship banner? Yes.
They ought to.
They should. They could add it. Well, add it here, and they could add one
Yeah,
at
they
at
absolutely deserve it.
T-Mobile. They won the division. Ginny, here's one we could run through, Dan. Ginny asks, can you explain how the round robin works?
We can go through that, sure.
Yeah, sure. So the top 4 teams in the East and the top 4 teams in the West each get a bye through. They're not going to be participating in the play-in round, so they will get a bye.
They're automatically through. You can't get knocked out
They're in
the
playoffs.
round robin.
Yeah. And then what will happen is, so the top 4 in the West, just to kind of simplify it, in no particular order, but St. Louis, Colorado, the Golden Knights, and Dallas Stars, they will each play each other in a little round robin situation.
Everybody plays each other once.
Whoever wins that round robin is the top seed in the West. If there is a tie points-wise, let's say the Golden Knights and the Blues get 4 out of a possible 6 points and they tie, then it reverts back to regular season winning percentage, in which case the Blues would get it because they were the top seed in the West. But that's kind of basically how it works. And then 1 through 4 are ranked through the round robin, and top seeded team will play the lowest remaining seeded team for the play-in round, and so forth. Do I have that kind of right?
Yeah, that's as well as I could explain it. And the 4 teams that advance will be ranked 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
So then, let's say the Golden Knights win the round robin, they're number 1. Whoever's the lowest ranked team still standing would play the Golden Knights. And then they reseed. That's the interesting part, where we normally, in recent years anyhow, have not seen reseeding from round to round. So rather than, okay, if the Knights win, you're going to play the winner of this team versus this team. No. You have no idea. You could have a much wider range of potential opponents should you advance, which makes it a little bit more challenging for us, because you can kind of, all right, we can prepare for this team, we can prepare for that team, narrow it down. But when you reseed, you really have a wide open situation, as you would say, Dave.
That's right. Lots of questions about the broadcast schedule.
Oh, boy.
Stay tuned. It's being worked on, we're told. A work in progress, like everything else in life. But soon enough, we'll have that. We'll have all that.
Looking forward to it,
figured
Dave?
out. I am. Yes.
It's going to be a little bit different.
I'll be sitting
right there.
for the most part right here, doing games, and you and the lawman will be in our other studio, kind of on the other side where our team offices are. But yeah, it'll be fun, right? Can't wait. It's going to be, and I just love especially early on, 5 and 6 games a day. Like, it's going to be, in addition to our games and what we're doing, to be able to watch, hockey again, but also Stanley Cup playoff games again is going to be great.
I'm just so happy that we live in a time where so much technology allows us to do all of this, the people who work behind the scenes to make all of this happen. Of course, here with the Golden Knights, but at the league and our broadcast partners, that imagine, Dave, just 20 years ago trying to do something like this. There was no HD TV. There was no high-speed internet. This would have been virtually impossible to do remotely, at least in the way that we're planning to do it now. So at least take that with us.
We will listen in once again as the Golden Knights continue their practice session here at Summerlin Hospital Rink. And that is, of course, Pete DeBoer, courtesy of the Next Gen Cam. And our training camp bulletin continues, presented by Station Casinos. Dave Gosher along with Dan Duva, Stormy Bonatoni waiting in the wings. Be curious to see what she's cooked up here on this Thursday. Maybe it'll be a birthday cake of some sort.
That's what I'm hoping for.
I'm looking around the studio. There's nothing.
Get cooking, Stormy.
This is junk,
My
Stormy.
expectations from Dave.
Head back to the house. Throw something together.
You got birthday plans later? What are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, probably be a dinner of some sort. There's been talk of a key to the city ceremony. No, there will be, I think, a dinner somewhere.
All right.
Probably in the Summerlin area. And,
Maybe a beverage or two?
And maybe an adult beverage or two.
Maybe some Foley family wine?
That could very well be. Thank you for checking in, Thomas, watching on YouTube in Scotland. Wow. Thanks for tuning in, Thomas. Glad that you could join us here. You're watching the Golden Knights continuing to go through their training camp. And, of course, the Next Gen Cam has you covered as the Golden Knights get ready. There's a look at Marc-Andre Fleury. And Shane's talked about this, Dan, in terms of, whatever team can get to their game the quickest, right? There's no real time. The Golden Knights, you could say, might have a little bit, and along with the round-robin teams, a little bit longer or a little bit more runway, but not much more. They'll have the exhibition game. They'll have the 3 round-robin games, as opposed to the teams during the playing round of 1 exhibition and then right to the best of 5. Whatever team can get to their game the quickest and find their game the quickest. And, it's been the subject of a lot of fodder about the Golden Knights goaltending situation, right? They make the big trade for Robin Lehner. It was a straight rotation between Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury after Lehner came over from Chicago. And they're in a good spot where they've got 2 real good ones, but that competition, and Pete DeBoer was kind of asked about this the other day, when's the last time as a coach you really had to make a decision as to who was going to be your guy or the guy you were going to lean on the most?
I thought he might talk about when the Sharks faced the Golden Knights last year, and we know Martin Jones was the guy, but he was struggling so much. He stuck to his guns and did not switch to Aaron Dell, and the Sharks prevailed in that series and then won another round. But he didn't talk about that. He talked about not any season with the San Jose Sharks. He talked about his first season with the New Jersey Devils, which, by the way, was when the New Jersey Devils reached the Stanley Cup final and lost to the LA Kings way back in 2012. Now think about it. He's been to the Stanley Cup final twice, and both times in the first year with that respective club. And, of course, with the Devils in 2012, you still had Martin Brodeur, who had broken into the NHL in 1994, right? So he was still around, and we think he was hitting 40 years old that season. But the Devils organization looking for an eventual replacement, would they go with a young prospect or would they go from outside the organization? And the answer was outside the organization. A Boston College Eagle, no less, David.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Corey Schneider, who
Yeah.
had come over from the Vancouver Canucks organization. And sadly, it has been a struggle the last couple of years for Schneider, and it didn't pan out quite the way you might have hoped. But back in 2012, Schneider was very much on the rise as an up-and-coming goaltender. So you had the veteran in Brodeur, and you had an up-and-comer in Schneider. So this is a little bit different. Fleury, 35 years old, not 40 like Brodeur was. Lehner, a little bit more veteran than Corey Schneider was at the time. So it's not exactly the same, but there's still that pull and tug of the old guard and the new guard.
Well, interesting too, Dan, we're going to welcome Stormy in a minute, but just to kind of finish that thought, Dan, that he was asked about, you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who's 35 right now, and he was asked about him and Marty Brodeur, and he said the things that really stuck out the most were their love for the game and how much they love to be around the rink. They love to practice. They love the morning skates. They love being on the ice. He said, a couple of other guys that came to mind that he coached, Jaromir Jagr and Joe Thornton, and especially he said as they were rink rats. And Jaromir Jagr is still playing right over in the Czech Republic, playing for the team he owns and Kladno, and he's got to be 67, 68. No, but I think he's 45 or something. He's in the mid-40s, right? But he said, how much they love the game, and he said they also were smart enough to realize that when maybe certain areas of their game were starting to slip due to age, they were smart enough to recognize it, and they knew what to do to compensate for it and get better in other areas in order to make up for that, as we see Marc-Andre Fleury and the rest of his mates head off briefly as the Zambonis come out to flood the ice.
And I'm interested how Pete DeBoer handles this. We mentioned how he handled Dell and Jones, and also how he's been quite clear it's his call who's going to be the goaltender, whereas Jorge Gallant had deferred to Dave Pryor, who was the Golden Knights goalie coach. Pete DeBoer's been very clear he's making the decision, and in the 6 games since Leonard joined the club, it's been a straight alternation from game to game. I don't know if that's realistic into the postseason here, but it's an area where the head coach does have some involvement in getting the fingers in with the goaltending. In other words, I wonder about, okay, a coach can go through drills, we're watching power play, penalty kill, and don't get me wrong, the goaltender is involved in the penalty kill for sure. But how much is a head coach doing to coach the goalies in these situations? A goalie gets some feedback from a goalie coach, and Mike Rosati is here to help in that effort, but at the same time, you've got to believe that some of the teams that go far in this postseason will be on the back of a hot goalie. And whether it's a Marc-Andre Fleury or a Robin Leonard, maybe Shesterkin with the Rangers, maybe Carey Price with the Canadiens, teams that maybe you didn't expect to go far in this postseason, but you have a hot goalie. The long haul over a regular season, Dave, you look at some of the Vezina candidates, Andrei Vasilevsky last year, and, maybe he gets it again this season. Just because he's the best goalie in the regular season, like we talked about earlier, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the best postseason goaltender. It's more about who gets hot. So how does the coach get his fingers into that and propel a goaltender to get hot? It's a little bit different than coaching a power play.
And we've seen it in years past, and it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. Last year, Jordan Binnington led the way for the St. Louis Blues, but you think back to 2018, it was Philip Grubauer and Braden Holtby for the Capitals. We know in Pittsburgh it was Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray. So we've seen both. I mentioned Shane's Boston Bruins won the Cup in 2011. Tim Thomas all the way to the Conn Smythe. Jonathan Quick carries the Kings to a couple of Cups. I think the big thing here is the condensed version, too, of all this, right? It's going to be 65 days total from the start until, if they go all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. You've got to think you're good. Usually in the playoffs it's you play every other day. This is going to be a different deal. Now, that could be mitigated a little bit by no travel. Obviously, you're just going to be in the hub, but you'd have to think you're going to need to rely on both, through some point here as you move on in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's assuming that everybody stays healthy. And the Golden Knights organization is all too familiar with the health of goaltenders being suspect. And they'll take 3, we expect, with Oscar Dansk being the 3rd one. Those are some interesting decisions that we'll see how it plays out. And they'll have to cut a couple of guys based on who's at camp right now before they get down to the 31 that will go to the bubble. But it's a little bit different. A lot more players on the roster going into this postseason than you would normally have. The 23 you'd have to cut down to start a regular season. I wonder if that's a blessing or a curse, Dave. Whereas, those 3 extra guys, those are guys can get right in there. They might not play game 1 of the regular season, but they'll play game 2. When you've got these extra guys, coaches aren't normally carrying that many. You got black aces in the playoffs, but this is different. I mean, you're wanting to include guys not for their future aspirations and the experience. That's nice. You want to have guys who can contribute because there's no dipping into the minors right now in a long, long postseason. And
you'd love to be, not that they would ever invite us there, a fly on the wall to see the conversations, right? Yeah. Coaching staff, management, as to, all right, we know this, the main group, but who are the extra guys we're going to take with us?
Yeah, and
who's going to be part of it?
And it also comes down to some of those decisions where if, let's say, player X gets injured, which is the right person to go in? It's not as simple as who's next on the depth chart. Let's just say, God forbid, one of the Golden Knights defensemen is injured. Okay, well, John Merrill steps in, or Derek Englund steps in, or Nick Hague steps in. How much of it is dependent upon the depth chart, right? Who's next up? Then there are the other factors, lefty or a righty. Are you looking for an offensive-minded player? You're looking for a more stay-at-home guy. It's not as simple as just going down the depth chart like you would in, say, the NFL to your backup quarterback. It's different depending on who's available and who's not available, just like we talked about earlier with the lines and Nick Cousins going in right now for Pacioretty.
Someone that's opened up a lot of eyes in this camp, because we really haven't seen him, right? Here in Vegas, obviously, is Peyton Krebs.
Yeah.
Their first-round pick from last year, who was out with an injury most of last season. And then, he has really impressed. And, they've talked about how close they feel he is, his ability to make plays, his speed, his skill to make plays in, on the fly in real time in high traffic areas. Doesn't seem to shy away from the physical stuff. He's not a very big guy, but the way the game is played now, it seems to me you don't really need to be 6'2", 220, and he's really shown, they feel he's got world-class skill, and we have seen that on a few different occasions here over the last couple of weeks.
Without getting too much into the specifics of all of those skills you talked about, Dave, you just like the way he carries himself. The way he skates up to Paul Stastny and Marc-Andre Fleury, and he's there eager to listen. And when I say listen, he's not zoning out and just hearing the words, right? The music without the notes without the music. He really seems to be digesting what he's hearing from his teammates and from his coaches. He's got that smile when he talks to the media. You get a feeling for the confidence that he has. And I heard Darren Millard and Mike McKenna talking about his vision. And what makes for good vision, as Mike McKenna pointed out, he's got his head up. For a lot of young players, you might hear a coach say to a young player, keep your head up, keep your head up. You've got to have your head on a swivel. And it seems to me Peyton Krebs and his vision and keeping his head up, those are really strong fundamentals to have. And listening, observing, all of that, I think, ties together. Whether he gets into game action or not, who knows? But at the very least, you'd have to believe that this experience will accelerate his path to the National Hockey League.
And it is, in a lot of ways, Dan, and I know you grew up a huge Devils fan, and the job they did of drafting and developing players. I mean, they were so much of the core of those championship teams in New Jersey. And I think from the Golden Knights' point of view, if you look at, be it either drafting or college free agent signings, but you think of a Zach Whitecloud, somebody like a Nick Hague. You've got Cody Glass, who you'd love to see when he's able to get back from injury next season, what he can do. Jack Dugan just recently signing, Peyton Krebs. They're the lifeblood of your organization. At some point, you need to turn over some of it and some of the pieces of the pie to younger, fresher blood and fresher legs. And they've got, I think they feel, and there's a look at Peyton Krebs, some real good young prospects they feel can contribute here in the not-too-distant future.
Looks like there's going to be some scrimmage action coming up here, Dave. You going to get the play-by-play pipes out and ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you were calling the scrimmage the other day. You're ahead of me. You did a heck of a job.
Well, it was the other day when they were doing some power play work. It's harder to do play-by-play of some drills, but when it was last week, I guess, where they did sort of an impromptu scrimmage, and Darren had left the studio for a little bit, and I wasn't going to let the moment pass. So it's one of those things where you kind of walk up to the diving board, you hop a couple of times, and you jump, and there's no going back. Right?
You're the triple Lindy.
No, it was a splash, I guess, for some, but it was frightful in another sense. So I'm eager to hear Dave do some play-by-play.
Yeah, this would be just wonderful.
On your birthday.
My birthday.
What a gift.
And what a treat this is. Well, Stormy Bonantoni is going to join us here momentarily. As you take a look there, of course, Ryan McGill and Mike Rosati behind the gray team bench. And, of course, the other part of the coaching staff would be behind the white team bench. Not just yet, but there's a look, of course, Riley Smith, John Merrill, Derek England, et al. Getting ready as the Golden Knights. Of course, our friends at Station Casinos presenting the training camp bulletin as the Golden Knights, along with the rest of the NHL. There was terrific news the other day that, the very stringent testing throughout the league, over 2,600 tests administered last week, only 2 positive tests, which was fantastic news. So there we go. So that's good stuff. The Golden Knights Training Camp Bulletin presented by Station Casinos as you take a look at the Summerlin Hospital rink here at City National Arena. Dave Gosher joined by Stormy Bonantoni, who's been waiting in the wings very patiently as the two play-by-play guys yapped on and on and on. But now Stormy's here, so things will change.
While I was in the wings, and you guys were talking about how I needed to bring a cake on set, it was a little short notice.
Okay, fine.
So I did make this for you.
Oh, happy
while
birthday.
I was waiting. I don't know if we can get a tighter
hi,
shot
I am
of
Dave.
this or you can read it. But Dave always in meetings, instead of saying, oh, I'm here or Dave's on, he says, hi, I'm Dave. Hi, this is Dave.
Yep. I just want to let people know that I'm in attendance.
And I did a nice question mark too, since you've been eluding the age topic next to the candles.
I can't remember. There's a lot of candles. Let's put it this way. There's more candles this year than last year.
Same.
That's safe enough to say.
Same.
So the next gen cam, as you take a look here, the Golden Knights are about to scrimmage here at the Summerlin Hospital rink. So Stormy, you were saying, and you had an interesting chat with number 88 yesterday. What's going on in the coconut of Nate Schmidt
I
these
got
days?
some really good insight into bubble life thanks to Nate Schmidt. And as Dan was quizzing you, Dave, earlier on who had been in that fourth line that had been doing all the starting during those 19 games of the 22 under Pete DeBoer. I have a little question for you. Who do you think is on the fun committee that has been created for the bubble? Nate Schmidt told me that he is the director of fun. And there are 3 others that are on the fun committee.
The director of fun. Is this like did he have to run for this position? Was there a campaign? Like
I think if you create the committee, you
name
can
yourself
be
the director.
Yes.
I would say would Shea Theodore be part of that?
He is not.
Alex Tuch?
Nope.
Alex Tuch, the
No,
king of
he's
gaming?
not. Yeah, he might be the director of the gaming council for the bubble, but not the fun committee.
Nick Holden?
Nick Holden is one.
There you go.
Yes.
Good guess by Dave.
I know, John, you're watching.
Oh, the old personal, that guy on the screen right near, the goaltender.
So interestingly enough, he's
Flower?
not directly on the committee, but I know he will be. He might be in an advisory role.
Yeah, he's a consultant. So wait a minute. So far we've got Schmidt,
and Holden.
Marchessault?
Yes.
Wow.
One more.
I get it. Brian Reeves.
Yes.
Ah,
there you go.
I knew I'd get it.
So
if we sat here till midnight, I would get them all.
That is your Golden Knights Fun Committee for the bubble. And Schmitty gave me a little bit of insight. They've got a fantasy baseball league going. He said they are going to have a mandatory team fun night at least once a week while they're there, which will be potentially karaoke night, trivia, maybe that Just Dance, what is that, Dance Dance Revolution, something along those lines. Will Carrier also actually said that for some of the guys that aren't really super into gaming, even though, I mean, everybody's bringing gaming consoles, for some people that aren't, they might be getting some remote-controlled cars and remote-controlled, like, little hovercraft items to bring with them.
I could just see this. They're having like drag racing in the hallway.
They're not packing lightly.
Having like a hovercraft. Like, are they going to bring a drone? Maybe they have some drone footage of the car races.
That's what they're trying to do. I was like, I have a feeling that that's going to go bad very quickly.
Oh my heavens! What would Stormy bring to the fun committee? Like,
I
mean, anything good?
Probably just like, have you ever played? I can't think of the name of it right now. That's the word. Code Names. Have you ever played the game Code Names?
No.
It is very fun. I'm not going to explain it to you because it's too much to explain, but look it up because that's a really, really fun game that I would be down to get into, and maybe like Cards Against Humanity just to bring some levity and humor and fun.
I played that one. I played Yahtzee.
Yahtzee?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Somebody's got to bring what's the one where you have the polka dots on the ground and you got I can't, I'm like drawing such a hard
Twister.
Twister.
Right? Twister. Connect 4? That was the
Gosh, that's so embarrassing. The one with the colored polka dots on the floor and you got to get bendy.
Great explanation.
Like, oh, goodness gracious.
That's fantastic, Stormy. That's great. We've got some people checking in, and we welcome your thoughts, comments, questions, whatever mode you want to send them over to us. But these folks chiming in on Facebook. Spence on Long Island. Hi to Spence. Some people checking in from Vegas: Brian, Tisha, Terry, Jennifer, and Christina, and Jasmine checking in from Billings, Montana. It was not quite, by the way, you saw Ryan Reeves a moment ago, pot one here in the scrimmage. It was not quite a year ago, but coming up on it, August of last year, that I would have been in Billings, Montana, as part of the Golden Knights road trip, where they go to some different spots in the off season. And I want to say that was I had been to, I think it might have been my only time in the Montana, but it was awesome. We got to the rink in Billings. People were think about how much the world has changed. People were all lined up outside waiting for the team to come, and it was fantastic. I'm trying to remember which player. I want to say maybe Jake Bischoff had come in for that one. Yeah, which was great. And then Zach Whitecloud joined us, and he was on the bus ride. We had a long bus ride, and he was on the bus ride. And what was the card? We were playing the card game after the Queen or Chase the Ace or one of those.
We're having a really hard time remembering game names.
But yeah, Zach Whitecloud was with us the whole time.
That's
on
so
the bus,
fun.
And it was a blast. But yeah, that was just not quite a year ago.
I know there are a lot of things that we've all been disappointed with losing time on during this whole COVID-19 pause and everything, but that's one thing I was really looking forward to, is doing the road trip this summer. I did get the good fortune, though, this season to get to go up to Whitefish, just outside of Kalispell, Montana.
I haven't been there.
For one of our nightlife episodes this year, so that was really cool. It was a really unique experience up there. It's an awesome mountain.
Supposed to be a beautiful, beautiful part of the country, to say the least. But yeah, it's interesting you say, Stormy, that these guys that, and I've asked Shane about this, and I think more than anything, when you're away from the game or when your time playing the game is finished, what they would tell you they miss the most is being around the guys. Mm-hmm. They don't miss the practices. They probably miss playing the games, but it's being around the guys. Well, they've got, you talk about a unique opportunity here, and trying to make the best of what that opportunity is going to be. They're going to be in this bubble in Edmonton if all goes well, it's going to be for 2 months. And it's great that they formed a fun committee to decide, the way to kind of keep their sanity and make it as much fun as they can when they're not playing the game.
Yeah, and Dave, that is pretty much what I would say every person that I have talked to on the Golden Knights, when I've asked just what did you miss the most during that time away from the ice, it was just being around my buddies, being around the guys. And Mark Stone, when he was asked about kind of like the challenges of the bubble situation and everything, he referenced what will be some of the hardships, but then he said, hey, at the end of the day, I'm going to be playing hockey and hanging out with my friends. So it's being around the guys, it's having that camaraderie, and we're going to be all facing this situation together.
Little special teams work right now for the Golden Knights. It's been touched on over the last little while, and Pete DeBoer referenced it again over the last couple of days. Just, the point of they do realize, and they are very cognizant of just how lucky they are. I mean, if you take a look at what's going on in the real world, and especially in certain areas of our country, this group, the ability for them to be together. I touched on right before Dan left us a little while ago. The NHL, very stringent testing through these phases of the program that will continue when they get into phase 4, which is returning to games. Over 2,600 tests last week, and only 2 positive tests, which is, obviously you'd like that number to get to 0, quite obviously, but to only have 2 was just great news, because I think that has been, Stormy, quite honestly, one of the big concerns that's got to be floating around in the back of their minds. What if there's a flare-up, heaven forbid? So far, there's been some here and there. It seems like there's been issues in certain areas and with certain teams, but by and large, from a league-wide standpoint, fingers crossed that will continue. They have not seen that happen.
Yeah, it'll be huge, especially for everyone to be able to get into the bubble healthy, to maintain that bubble health throughout, and not have to be in a situation where there are a number of people that have either come down with it or through contract tracing been around it, that they could potentially have a stoppage or a pause or anything like that. So very, very good news when I saw that come through the league, that it was only 2 positive tests and a couple thousand that they had administered. Another thing I think will be kind of interesting is that later on today, at some point, the NHL is going to be sharing kind of full details about what's going to be happening in the bubble, not only in terms of testing and how those will be administered every single day, but to players and staff about the restaurants and activities and the different ways that they are going to accommodate the players in that life. We've heard about the lounge that they're going to have so that the players and coaches will be able to watch the games and a bunch of different things. So I'll be very interested to hear more of the details, I guess, that are going to come out through that. It's going to be told to players and staff first, of course, but then once we get that information, it'll be really interesting, like even down to hotel structure and access points and all of those different things.
You know, and I can't imagine the work that's had to be, that's been undertaken here over the last several months, just to make sure that everyone is safe and sound once they get into the bubble. But for the Golden Knights, in a real unique opportunity for this group. You know, you have 16 teams in normal times that make the playoffs every year. Of course, this year it's 24, and it's a bit expanded. But this team this year, and how they feel, they really have a legitimate chance, you know, to do something special and to win it. Hey, look, they're not the only team. If you look around the league, you look at, you know, St. Louis Blues trying to go back-to-back. The Boston Bruins have the best record in the league at the time of the pause. But, you know, they're not alone. There's a lot of teams you could put in that legitimate contender category. But from the Golden Knights' perspective, and, you know, Marc-Andre Fleury, of course, already has himself 3 Stanley Cup rings and has gone to the Cup final on 5 times, 5 different occasions. A chance for him and his teammates to make a run and try to go to the Cup final for the second time in 3 years. Let's listen in once again, courtesy of the Next Gen Cam. The Golden Knights working a little special teams here as our coverage continues. Training Camp Bulletin presented by Stations Casino. Golden Knights Training Camp Bulletin presented by Stations Casino. Dave Gosher along with Stormy Bonantoni. You see the Golden Knights, and this has been something that's been a mainstay throughout most of this training camp, working on some special teams here, and an area that the coaching staff has talked about, especially on their penalty kill, that they wanted to see improved. They were giving up a lot of goals at one point earlier this year when they were shorthanded. Tried to make some improvements right before, really before the bye to get it headed in the right direction, and trying to continue to tweak both special teams. Pete DeBoer said the other day, we had a little Zoom call with him, Stormy, and he was asked, there's certain areas you're still trying to fine tune. And he said, look, all of it, right? He says, it's we don't have it all figured out just yet, but again, they'll still have a little bit of time between now and head to the bubble on Sunday, one exhibition game against Arizona, and then they're off to the races as they get going for the round robin tournament, and then the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Mike wants to know, who will be the first person to wear the C? Stormy, your thoughts?
I think that, the name that has continued to be swirled around, I think more than any other name, is Mr. Mark Stone. There have been a lot of other names that have been brought up in that conversation: Riley Smith, Jonathan Marchessault, Max Pacioretty, who of course was a previous captain with the Montreal Canadiens. So I just think that the way that Mark handles himself, and the way that, even when Pete said that we're not going to be naming a captain right now, but we will have one next year. Like a day before that, he was talking about just the leadership qualities that not only this whole group has, but that Mark Stone specifically has when it comes to mentoring young players, and the way that he leads, and just the type of person and player that he is. So I'm not really in the business of making predictions, but that's certainly the name that I have heard the most.
Well, you think about and you think about his. You mentioned the mentoring, Stormy, of Peyton Krebs living at the Stone House right now. He did the same with Brady Tuch during his time with Ottawa. And how important that is as really one of the strong leaders on this team. It's curious when you think about the spot these guys have put themselves in to be really ready and raring to go if and when they were ever going to be able to get to Phase 3. And it's been touched on that it was the leadership group of this team that drove that bus throughout the entire quarantine. That each guy, to a certain extent, had a little bit of a remote gym set up at their houses, but it was the veterans that took, and I think certainly Mark Stone will be at the top of that list of making sure it was just not, however long that pause was going to be, it was not wasted time, that they used it wisely, and we've been able to see the dividends of that over the first couple of weeks of training camp.
And holding each other accountable, I think, has been a phrase we've heard a lot too, that the coaches didn't necessarily have to do that for this group. The players were holding each other accountable. They were keeping on top of everything that they were doing, having those open-ended conversations, and being smart throughout this entire process. And I will just say, in terms of like the home gyms and stuff, kudos to the Golden Knights for being able to get some of those players who don't have that type of setup, having those things available for them in their homes it was a great thing that they were able to accomplish.
Yeah, their entire, Doug Davidson, their strength and conditioning coach, and their whole entire training staff, just a fantastic job to make sure that these guys had everything at their disposal to ensure that they stayed in the best shape possible to be able to try and get back here and give this a real good run.
I wanted to ask you about something. As we noticed today, Marc-Andre Fleury has been back to the white glove. Is there anything to that he's been changing out the white and the gold glove the last couple days?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and then for the longest time, he would wear the gold pads. I remember the gold pads.
Of course.
He wore those on weekend games, or I can't remember. And then I think he lost with them, and I think he put them in the closet for a year. I don't think he rolled them out of the mothballs for the longest time.
And then Nate Schmidt came along
and basically had to goad him into it. Please wear the gold pads again. So
Schmidt just loves the style.
It's great.
He was like, "Oh man, the flair!
It really
Those things just look clean."
Yeah, and I don't know. I think whatever works. Usually, a lot of it's correlated with winning. And obviously, if I remember right, he had a rough game with the gold pads, and we didn't think we were ever going to see him again. But
Well, I just remember when those things were in the closet, they were expected to be an auction item.
that's right. Had to pull them off the table.
Yep.
That's right. Game used gold pads by Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah, they replaced it with a pretty cool
Yep.
Marc-Andre Fleury goalie mask.
Yeah,
so I
that's
think
right.
that it still ended up being all right for whoever those auctioners were.
Yeah, it worked out well. Well, the Golden Knights kind of getting towards the end of things here. You can see they're slowly wrapping things up, doing a little bit of in-zone work here. There's a look at Marc-Andre Fleury as he, along with the rest of his teammates, continue to push forward here. And as we said, before we know it, they'll be heading to Edmonton and into the bubble as they get ready for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Stormy, thank you for the. It's not a virtual cake. I don't know what you call it. A cake on paper.
It is
That
a
was
beautiful artist rendering
Yeah.
of a cake.
Great. And I like that. For
Look at
somebody
the
that,
detail.
For somebody that
Exquisite.
still draws stick people,
What's your favorite kind of cake?
chocolate. Thank you.
It's chocolate cake. Knew it.
Okay.
There you go.
It's all the theater of the mind, right?
I have no life. I'm
No,
so sorry.
No, but that's great. Thanks very much, and thank you for tuning in. Of course, we thank Dan Duva for joining us earlier. Stations Casinos, a great sponsor here of our training camp bulletin, and we invite you to stay tuned. Of course, we'll be with you again tomorrow as the Golden Knights continue their training camp, and only a matter of days now before they head to Edmonton and the bubble and the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. We'll talk to you next time.